Pardon me a second, I've just got a fucking crump in my leg.
Oh, well, I suppose I should, what is it, vamp while you're doing that?
I challenge you to a duel.
Hello and welcome to the Movie Duel podcast. My name is Peter and I am your host. On each episode of the Movie Duel podcast, myself and one of my co-hosts pick a subject that's based around movies, and then we each pick a film that we think best fits that subject. However, this is one of our special Quickdraw episodes in which I invite a special guest to come on and discuss the movie duels of past and what they would have picked for some of the subjects that we've previously discussed. In the past, we've had some fantastic guests, including the amazing Lexi Bowen, the fantastic Sean Panda Nicholson, and the brilliant Ben from Filmbusters. But this time around, it's the turn of Mark Reid, who's one of the co-hosts for the Creative Psychopaths podcast. And before we get into that, just a few reminders about how you can get in touch with us here at the Movie Duel podcast. You can do so on Facebook, on Instagram, just by searching Movie Duel podcast. You can catch us on X and on Threads at Movie Duel Pod. You can email us at movieduelpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube and now on Patreon as well, which we have for just around about £1 or $1 a month. You can get access to our special Movie Duelist Roundtable episodes, which will be coming out monthly, and the new one due very soon. And if you can spare a moment to like and subscribe to our podcast, that would be absolutely amazing. It does encourage us to get new listeners and spread the joy of the Movie Duel podcast. So thank you very much. And without further ado, let's head on over to Quickdraw with Mark from Creative Psychopaths.
You will no longer stand between me and my destiny.
Okay, so on this episode of Quickdraw, I am joined by horror movie podcaster and sandwich aficionado. It's Mr. Mark Reid from Creative Psychopaths. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, very well. Very well.
Um,
Ready to go to war with these movies or whatever it is we do. Dueling.
Yes, it's not quite as combative as that, but we'll see. Depends what you pick, really, I suppose. Uh, so, for those listeners that might not know you, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Creative Psychopaths.
Well, yeah, obviously my name's Mark, and I'm a bit of a horror movie fan. Started a podcast a couple of years ago, and it's sort of changed and developed since then to the point now we make delicious horror sandwiches, which is essentially a movie filling surrounded by two slices of chatty goodness, almost bread, if you will, to create a sandwich. So often that's filled with guests, and often that's just filled with me and my co-host Matthew, trying to fill the time with things. But we do a good job of it, and yeah, so you should listen to that.
Absolutely should. I mean, it's on my regular rotation, and obviously I've been a guest a few times now, and obviously on a few episodes ago on Quick Draw we had your co-host Matthew,
Yes.
who joined me on one of these episodes. So it'd be interesting to see whether or not, I mean, you've got one or two of the same subjects as him, so it'd be interesting to see if you pick. But I mean, outside of horror, what are your other sort of go-to genres for movies? What other sort of styles do you like?
I'm all over the place, really. I found just lately a that I really like weird movies. And I don't really know what genre that fits into, but stuff like Lynch and things that are similar to that. I like films that make me think a bit. But yeah, I'll watch anything. I
Yeah.
will watch anything.
I go through phases of weird films like Lynch and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll have a sort of a spate of just wanting to watch the weirdest shit out there, and then at other times I'll be like, I can't be arsed with this. This is taking too much thinking. I just need to watch Jaws again or some dumb shit like Anaconda or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, currently I'm letting Chat GPT decide what movies I watch.
You are right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's certainly because what was it? I mean, I've not listened to your latest episode in full, but it kicked up something on the previous episode, um, and I was interested to see what you thought of that. I can't remember what it was now.
I'm not sure what I had before the current one, but currently I'm supposed to be watching Schindler's List. I've downloaded it, but I
Ah, right.
haven't yet started it. Sadly, I'm a bit of a pain when I see a long run time. I'm like,
Yeah, I know. It can't be. It's not good. It's not good. I think as I've established on this podcast, I've got borderline narcolepsy, so um, the long run times are like, oh, this is going to take a two or 3 days, I think. Uh, um, but obviously on these episodes of Quick Draw, so we delve into the movie jewels of past, and we're going to give Mark some of the subjects that we've discussed in the past, and get his thoughts on our choices and perhaps what he would have picked for those episodes. So, Mark, are you ready?
as I will ever be.
Okay, so we're going to start way, way, way at the back. Episode one, which was the most underrated sequel ever made, with my choice of Predator 2 from 1990 and Liam's choice of Gremlins 2, the new batch from 1990 as well. But what say you? Would you have picked either of those two?
I would have been sorely tempted to pick Gremlins 2.
Mm.
Although I would, on the other hand, probably argue that it wasn't underrated, but it's not underrated by me, but maybe by others.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I think
um,
um it was one of those choices that Liam sort of said on the episode, I think it was just by design, it was seen as inferior because it was a sequel.
yeah, and it's a totally different sort of movie, really. I mean, it's still batshit, but something else. But Predator 2 is a hell of a choice as well. I
Yeah,
think the reason it's underrated is people just wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger, and when it wasn't him, that's what took away from it. So,
absolutely,
but it
absolutely. I
is
mean,
good.
and I said on the episode, the reason I picked it is because it's the lowest rated Predator film on Rotten Tomatoes,
Oh, really?
which is just insane.
Yeah.
Outside of the Alien versus Predator films, but there we go. But what would you have gone for? What would your choice have been?
Well, based around this sort of, I've gone for Terminator Dark Fate, which
Oh wow, okay.
I really think is underrated. As far as the Terminator films are concerned, I think that film should have been Terminator 3. Sure, it's not as good as Terminator and it's not as good as Terminator 2.
Mm.
But it follows the story nicely. I feel that it reintroduces Sarah Connor and Arnold as a different Terminator, and it delves a bit deeper into having destroyed Skynet, but that ultimately as humans we're still destined to fuck it up. It's got good action, it's got a good Terminator. The actual, I don't know what they call the Terminator in it, T-Red or something like that, I can't remember.
Right.
And I think he really does a good job in that of being an actual infiltration unit. They always talk about him being like infiltration
Mm.
units. um you know Arnie stands out in a crowd, and
Absolutely.
and Robert Patrick was about as creepy as people get.
Mm.
Um, But this guy, the Terminator in it's really personable with people. Like he's able to, interact with people on a level. He looks like a person. So I really enjoyed Terminator Dark Fate, and it was definitely really, it did very badly at the box office.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a good flick, good action film.
I must admit, I mean, I got about 20 minutes in and I gave up on it, but I do probably need to give it another go.
You may have fallen asleep.
Quite possibly. It's completely possible. Absolutely. But to be fair, I did that with Terminator Genesis, and then I sort of gave it another go, and I really enjoyed that. I would say that that's quite underrated. I think
I didn't mind Genesis either.
it was quite clever. I mean, you know, you can't really get around the fact that you're supposed to be retelling the timeline of the first film, but you've got two completely different actors in the
Yeah,
main two roles, which really sort of
it's a bit jarring, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I've got a really dodgy relationship with the Terminator franchise. I mean, I still haven't watched the entirety of Salvation. I can't get through it. I just can't. And that's, one of the more um you
I
know,
like that one. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I know that's quite well thought of in the sort of pantheon of Terminator sequels, but I've given it about three goes, I think, and I just can't get through it. But there we go. But
Yeah,
it's definitely an interesting choice.
yeah. I
Definitely.
mean, the real answer to the question is Grease 2, but I didn't want to talk about Grease 2.
Absolutely. Um, okay, so moving on to episode 4, with Liam. This was childhood trauma or kids' films that scared us. We talked about my choice of Return to Oz from 1985 and Liam's choice of The Watcher in the Woods from 1980.
Yeah, well, I mean, of your two choices, Return to Oz it's still scary.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
yeah, definitely that's a childhood trauma movie. I did watch her in the woods on the podcast, one of the early ones we did, and it's a terrible film.
It is, but I actually think there's quite a bit of potential with Watcher in the Woods if they'd have made it
uh
an actual horror film.
yeah, perhaps, but there's so much in that film that I didn't like, and that was early doors when I was explaining the whole plot.
Right.
And there are bits that happen in the film where the plot seems to move, but it has this weird moment of people being mid conversation and having continued that conversation later on, and you're like,
Yeah.
did you just stop talking? So yeah, what Watcher in the Woods was to me, it's like, but then I saw it as an adult. Maybe if I'd seen it as a child, it
Mm,
might have done
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, as a child of the '80s, we were treated to all kinds of awful images.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
Neverending Story was grim. I mean, nobody's
Mhm.
ever got over Artax sinking in the sand.
Yeah, but he comes back at the end. He comes back at the end. It's all good. It's all good. He's running through the fields or the desert or whatever it is.
I remember Howard the Duck scared the shite out of me as well. There's some evil aliens towards the end that scared the hell
Mm,
out of me.
hmm
Um, but my answer to this is Superman 3. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, ultimately for the lady who gets turned into a robot at the end, which is so freaky.
Oh God, yeah.
And I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. But as a lad as well, I was really into Superman. So seeing him be evil,
Mm,
it was too much for me.
yeah.
Because he gets all his costume gets all manky and his hair gets all emo and he sleeps with some chick. He really messes up the world. At some point, I think opens up an oil liner.
Yeah.
However, I think later on he blows all the oil back in. I'm not quite sure if that's how that works, but
As you do,
um,
as you
but,
do.
but yeah, Superman 3 scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I'd agree with that. That transformation scene with the woman at the end is incredibly scary, especially for a young child. Yeah, yeah, that's certainly a moment to behold. Okay, so moving on to episode 7, which is my second episode with Nicole, which was the best liminal space horror movie, in which we talked about my choice of Event Horizon from 1997 and Nicole's choice of Pulse from 2001. First of all, Pulse, have you seen that?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't get a lot out of Paul, so I would listen to your episode, and I think you and I were sort of very much on a similar level to that. There was a lot of good stuff about it, but also
It tries to do that a little bit too much, doesn't it?
I struggled staying awake with it as well. And then towards the end, it starts, you know, I think this is supposed to be about liminal part of the liminal space, but it starts being more confusing than it needs to be.
Yeah.
There's a door. Yeah, I know, like, yeah. And yeah, I think we did Event Horizon on the podcast at some point. Yeah, we did. And I don't know what I think about. I probably wouldn't have picked either of your choices.
Okay. So
Um,
what would you have gone for?
well, firstly, I'm not quite sure if I understand liminal space yet. I've done as you told
Same.
me to, and listened to the episode and asked Matthew and looked it up on the internet. I'm still not sure, but I'm gone for a Razorhead,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
which I'm hoping counts.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so, yeah.
Oh, good.
I think most of Lynch, you could probably sort of put into that sort of liminal space bracket for sure. I mean, I like you. Even when Nicole explained it to me, still kind of struggled. And I think a lot of people thought that I just completely misunderstood it and thought it was a liminal space horror movie. But yeah, Eraserhead. It's a while since I've seen that. I do need to rewatch it, but I remember there was a weird phase when I was about sort of maybe 14, 15, 16, when I got my own telly in my bedroom.
Yeah.
So, and I'd always end up sort of picking up these films on like Channel 4 at 10 o'clock on a Sunday. And Channel 4's always had a good sort of selection of films and stuff. And I remember this Eraserhead popping up on there. So I was just watching this bizarre, batshit crazy film about a man and his odd baby.
Yeah. It goes in really weird places. It's the strangest film. I saw it for the first time. Yeah, I think last year, in fact.
Mm,
And I watched it, and I sort of hated it, But it's one of those ones where you finish watching it and it sticks in your mind for quite a long time.
mm.
And the more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed it. And then I went on to listen to the Evolution of Horror episode about it, and
Mm.
I think sometimes you need someone to help unpack your brain, and then you go, "Oh yeah, that I did
Yeah,
enjoy that."
especially with David Lynch. You need to sort of just stop and
Yeah, for
think about
sure,
what you've just watched.
for sure, for sure.
Okay, so moving on to episode 10, which was called Failed Nostalgia. Again with Nicole. It's basically films that we used to love, but we've seen recently and maybe not loving them anymore. So Nicole's choice was Face Off from 1997, and my choice was Batman Forever from 1995.
Well, I mean, first of all, who's picking Face Off?
I totally agreed with Face Off. I can't stand Face Off. I think it's a
Really?
horrible film.
Oh no!
I
It's
mean, it's
got
quirky and it's got the lines and all that sort of thing, but
oh yeah, it's got
oh,
Cage doing his best Cage, and
mm,
and
mm.
as action films go, it's all right. But yeah, no, fair enough. But it is personal opinion, isn't it? And oh, I think I like Batman Forever. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I probably would agree with you on that one. But I also really like Jim Carrey in it. But I went through that Jim Carrey stage that everybody did in the 90s where it was like, oh, I love Jim Carrey and everything he does.
Yeah, I mean, there's good bits to Batman Forever, but it was just not what I remembered at all. It was really, especially when you, as as you got older and learn a bit more about Batman lore and the actual characters, and we get the films that we got after the Nolan films and stuff, and then you go back to and you think, oh my God, what was I on?
I don't know. I mean, in the 70s, Batman was mental in the comic books. So, like there's whole heaps of comic book lore. Now he's dark and brooding, but at one point it was very silly. So
I guess.
I don't mind a bit of silliness, but yeah, I know what I know what you mean. This is the one that I really struggled coming up with an answer for.
Right.
And the only one I could really think of was, for the longest time, I would have had Big Fish on like a top 10 for me.
All
But
right.
I tried to watch it quite recently, and I can't put my finger on exactly what it was that I didn't particularly enjoy about it, but it just didn't hit as well. It was like, I think sometimes I find sometimes if something like breaks the glass for me, and then I'm like, oh, I can't get around this anymore. And I think there's such a difference between Ewan McGregor's accent and I've forgotten the name of the older guy, but the accents is too different, and then it made me go, no.
Is it Albert Finney?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a long time since I've seen that, but I remember enjoying it.
yeah.
Big Fish. That's the one where he's telling all the stories into it, and
That's right.
they all
Yeah,
think he's
yeah.
lying or whatever. But yeah, I've not seen it for a while. I mean, Tim Burton's sort of lauded as this great director, and you sort of actually look back at his filmography and think he hasn't actually done a lot of great stuff. Certainly not in the last
No,
20 years.
no. I agree. I think there's probably about four of his films, and at least two of them are Batman films
Mm.
that I really like. Probably Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice.
Sleepy Hollow. I'd throw Sleepy Hollow in the mix. I like Sleepy Hollow.
I
It's a
think
bit
I did.
long.
Yeah, well, there you go. You see,
Sleepy Hollow, Sleepy Pete. So moving into your wheelhouse a little bit with episode 13, or back into your wheelhouse. Worst horror remake. Vanessa joined me for this one. She picked The Wicker Man from 2006, and I picked Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007.
Yeah, I've got to admit I don't mind Rob Zombie's Halloween.
No.
As far as at least it's not a great film, but at least he sort of took the remake and went, come on, I'm going to try and do something different with it. So at least you went in and it wasn't exactly the same film.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody said, yeah, we don't need Michael Myers' backstory and stuff like that. But you know, I didn't mind all that. But the thing with that movie is it does raise more of the questions that you could raise in the original one. Like, if he's catatonic, how come he grew up to be 7'2" and made of muscle? So
Yeah.
there are those things, and I do tend to think Rob Zombie does a bit of tongue-in-cheek stuff. I don't think he's necessarily taking everything very seriously.
Mm.
But I'm not saying it's good. And I saw The Wicker Man again for the first time last year. I saw both of them for the first time last year, and I'm absolutely obsessed with the 70s version.
It's amazing film.
I just bought the vinyl soundtrack for it.
Yeah, I saw that. So cool.
Yeah. But and I had fun with Nicolas Cage's one, but between the two of them, that Wicker Man is by far the worst remake, because it just, it's just got this Americanized way of holding your hand as you go through it. This is what's happening. Don't worry, you're not going to get confused.
Yeah.
Whereas, obviously that original one's so batshit that you get lost as you're even watching it, and it's like, what is this film? Is it a musical? Is it a detective film? Who is this guy? So yeah, of the two of them, but I think when you spoke to Matthew, he talked about the remake of Psycho. And I'm gonna go down a similar route by saying the remake of Funny Games, which
Right. Okay. Yeah.
essentially is not a terrible film, but I think shot for shot remake, it's like, to me, it's what's the point? When we talk on the podcast, Matthew always says, a remake has to at least give you a bit of something extra. It can't be the exact same film, because what's the point?
Yeah.
So you dig back in, and I think, yeah, it was a great film, and I understand they'd want to bring it to American audiences, but I think with that film and the way that they do things, they could have done a bit more with it to Americanize it a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
And make it, well, I don't know the film, but the thing about that film is it's incredibly nihilistic.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the most nihilistic films ever made,
Yeah.
for
But that
sure.
nihilism does not come across as much in the American version for some reason. It just doesn't
No, and I don't. I
hit
mean,
as hard.
I mean, I understand that, they want to make it more commercial. It's obviously a good film when they want to sort of translate that to the English language and make it more accessible for a wider audience. But to me, when you watch, it's like The Ring. I mean, The Ring remake's not a bad
No,
film,
it's
and
okay. Yeah.
it does sort of change things up ever so slightly. But for me, I think it's just that it adds to that sort of otherworldliness of films that you don't, it's not your first language, so you don't, you're already unsettled because it's not a language that you understand, even if you've got subtitles. If you've got
Yeah,
subtitles, so you can follow the film. But to me, it just adds to that sort of tension, I suppose. Not,
yeah,
not what you're seeing, but just because you're in you're in something that you don't fully understand. And I
yeah,
always think it just adds to the sort of scariness of a film.
yeah. You're probably right. You probably are right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good choice. I think it's an unnecessary remake for sure.
Mm,
Very
yeah.
much like Psycho, and they didn't even add any wanking. Uh, but on that note, we'll just take a short break, Mark, and we'll be back in a moment.
This is me dancing to the short break music.
Okay, so welcome to the intermission. So this is the part of the episode in which I ask my guest a random question, a question that they've not prepared for, and get their honest first answer. So, Mark, are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Now we're of a similar age, I think. I'm pretty sure we are. But so this question's sort of designed around your youth. Um, if you could make a movie based on a cartoon from your childhood, what would it be? What would you like to see get a big screen adaptation?
Um, it's already happened, but He-Man.
Okay.
Like when I was a kid, I was all about Battle Cat. Battle
Hmm.
Cat was my favorite part of that. The whole transformation thing. Well, there's
Mm.
the the transformation and Battle Cat is was was just everything for me. That was, I think, probably why I didn't like that original Masters of the Universe. I've gone back now, and I can appreciate the originality and what they could do with budget. But no, but nowadays we could see, you know, something really great. I really enjoyed Kevin Smith's cartoon run on Netflix.
I've still not seen that. I still need to dip into that.
Yeah, it was certainly something different. But I'd definitely take He-Man any time of the day. Imagine how scary they could make Skeletor.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's as well as it's still a well-loved property as well, and there's still a
Yeah,
big fan base out there. And you think, we keep getting, even though the late, I was a big fan of the latest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I thought that was really good. But you think how much of that we still keep getting, every 10 years, Teenage
yeah.
Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we don't get any more He-Man.
No, it's a shame, and I think on reflection, because it is very male centric, and that's not really where they aim. Mind you, I suppose Turtles is a bit, really. I don't know, but
Mm,
it's very masculine. The old He-Man. It's
yeah.
although
Mm.
might be camp as well. Now I think about it. uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose the thing is that apart from sort of your Lord of the Rings and one or two other exceptions, though the sort of sword and sorcery films don't tend to do great at the box office. They don't tend to seem to get a big audience. I mean, you look back at the 80s and films like Crawl and God, what's the other one? There's a few other examples, but there was a Willow and films like that. They didn't
yeah, right.
get they didn't get the love, certainly at the box office.
Mm,
And until Lord of the Rings that's probably the only sort of exception to that rule.
yeah, that's very true. Yeah, yeah. You see,
So
it'd be great.
I think it would definitely have an audience, definitely. But I don't think we're going to get it, unfortunately.
No, no. Well, other than that, maybe Centurions. Do you remember them? Power Extreme.
Centurions, yes. Yeah, well, I mean, what was rattling around my head at a similar sort of time was, can you remember the Visionaries?
Yeah, I was gonna say Visionaries as well. Yeah.
Knights of the Magical Light. I used to have
Mm.
loads of them toys. They were great. But there's an endless amount. I mean, there was even talks of a Mask um film. I believe that's been sort of thrown around. Don't know if you can remember that one.
Hmm.
Um, and the other one that sort of popped into my head when I thought of this question was Jason the Wheeled Warriors.
Yeah. Right.
That could look pretty epic with today's technology.
Give us it all. We want it all.
Yeah, just make up everything, anything from the 80s, gummy
Yeah.
bears, trapdoor. Let's just do them all. Um, okay, so let's call that the end of the intermission, and we'll head back to the main episode. Thank you very much, Mark. Mark's doing a little dance, and I might be able to get the video actually and put that on the Facebook.
Oh, excellent.
Put the music over the top. Okay, so we're heading back into episode 16, the most underrated Sam Raimi film. So this was with Jamie Russell, and we talked about my choice of Darkman from 1990 and Jamie's choice of The Quick and the Dead from 1995. Are you generally a Sam Raimi fan?
Well, I mean, Evil Dead, of course.
Hmm. Of course, of course.
and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. So I'll take those. And of course, I've seen Darkman. I'm not quite sure if I've seen The Quick and the Dead. Who's in that?
It's Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio,
Oh,
Gene Hackman. It is a very very good film.
that's okay. I have seen it. I watched recently with my mum. I just didn't realize it was Sam Raimi. Yeah. That's a difficult one. Well, to choose between your ones, I'd probably have to go for Quick and the Dead because I didn't even realize it was Sam Raimi. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
that's a really good film. It's quite emotional as well. Yeah, I like that one.
It
But
makes it
that,
if you watched it again, you'd probably think, this is you can tell it's a Sam Raimi film with the quick
right.
cuts and the zooms and all that sort of high speed sort of camera tricks and stuff. It's
Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen Darkman in forever, but it is a good movie, though. It's certainly they should look at remaking that. Let's
yeah,
have everything.
remake everything, yeah. But what would you have gone for then if it weren't
Well,
those two?
well, I don't think Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness got enough love. Um,
Okay.
uh, I really enjoyed it. I really
Mm,
enjoyed the horror moments in it that
mm,
Sam Raimi brought, where he really cranked the Scarlet Witch up to being, a horror icon in that film.
mm.
She decimates plenty of superheroes, and then there's a moment like a chase scene where you're like, "Oh, this is Sam Raimi," like right down to it. And even given the sort of dead Doctor Strange later on that he sort of
Yeah.
inhabits a sort of you know, I really enjoyed that film. I didn't, like I say, I don't think it got quite as much love as I thought it deserved, but people
Mm.
are on a bit of a Marvel burnout, aren't they? And
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. And I think that was sort of that was the first. It was within that sort of first phase, wasn't it? After Endgame, and it was a real. I think everybody's just sort of struggling with trying to get back into the Marvel swing, and it's just I think that they've not had that sort of clear goal through the last two phases. Last two phases. We've had two phases since Endgame. There's not been that. There's obviously the Kang character that's up in the air now. Has been sort of dotted about, but there's not a great deal of connective tissue between the films in these um last two phases, and I think that probably didn't help. Um, where the multiverse of madness sort of sat in that timeline.
no, it didn't, and I don't think and I think the first Doctor Strange movie as well, people weren't a big fan of either. So it probably maybe didn't bring them back, but I thought it was really great, and I liked
Mm,
this the Sam Raimi about it. I just don't
yeah,
think people. Yeah, I don't think it was as well rated as it should have been.
yeah, totally agree. I think that's a good shout.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Okay, so episode 18. We were joined by Nicole to discuss Humble Pie or films that we'd avoided but ended up loving. With my choice of The Warriors from 1979 and Nicole's choice of Judd from 1984.
Now I am familiar with the cannibalistic human underground dweller, but I haven't seen it. It always pops up, and I'm like, I really should get round to seeing Chud, but
Mm,
I never have, and it's been a long time since I watched The Warriors, so I'm not really sure that I could pick between your two. Well, I can't really. I suppose I'd
okay.
have to say The Warriors because I have seen it. Um, but this doesn't fit yours, so I do have a proper answer. But I revisited Lord of the Rings, and I used to hate them, and it turns out they are actually really good. Uh, so
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's that's a hell of a series to sort of go back and revisit to reassess.
Yeah, well, I mean, it partly comes down to my dad passed away, and there were his favorite films, so I just sort of watched them
Mm,
just to, you know, well, I don't know what it was, just for a bit of connection, and I was
yeah.
like, oh, actually, these are really great. Uh, it's that runtime thing, I think, that catches me out. And I saw them all at the cinema, and
Mm,
sitting in a cinema seat for 3 hours is like torture to me.
mm,
Because I'm a bit of a fidgeter.
yeah. I know. God, I went last year, not last year. It was the year before to see the Batman. And Jesus Christ, I've never been so comfortable in my life.
I saw the Batman in an everyman cinema where you get to sit on a sofa, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, there's one of those in Lincoln, and I've still not been. Me and Liam keep saying that we're going to go, and it just, it's like a watch list. It just doesn't happen, you know.
They're a bit pricey.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, my actual choice for this was I had avoided Black Swan for ages.
All right.
I'd been told it was good, but I think I sort of somebody who maybe hadn't seen it said, "Oh, it's about ballet and that," and I was like, I think I sort of did know that, but I didn't know what it was actually about.
Yeah.
So I avoided it for ages and ages. And when I finally did watch it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. It's such a fantastic film. I'm not even sure what I can say about it apart from it's got amazing performances in it. It makes you
Mm,
think. It makes you like ballet to a certain degree.
mm.
I went on after this to watch an older film called The Red Shoes, which is also about ballet.
All right.
And again, that's a fantastic film. But yeah, that one also put me on a sort of that is Aronofsky, isn't it?
It
And
is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it put me on a sort of Aronofsky thing as well. So I watched a few of his films after
Mm.
that. So yeah, but Black Swan, won loads of awards, didn't it? But I was like, nah, I don't think this is for me. But it was for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not. I mean, it's like I a similar thing with Whiplash, thinking, this is about a jazz band and
Yeah, right.
all that sort of thing. I think this film's not going to be for me at all, even though it looked like it had the sort of acting chops and it got a lot of praise and Oscars and all sorts. But I didn't avoid that for as long as something like The Warriors, but and Whiplash is in now in my top 10 films of all time.
Oh
I
wow,
think it's
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
watched that and I was like, oh, this is a horror film,
mm, absolutely,
which sort of is.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's like the stepfather with drums. Okay, so moving on up to going all Heather Small on you. Moving on up to episode 19, best workplace comedy, with my choice of Clerks from 1994 and Tarquin's choice of Car Wash from 1976. Are you going to be the first person to tell me you've actually seen Car Wash?
No, I'm not. No, I considered watching it just to say, but no, I haven't seen Car Wash. I just wanted to join the ranks of the people who haven't seen it. Um, but I used to be a big Kevin Smith guy, so
Mm,
obviously I've seen Clerks. I've seen all of the Clerks. All of the Clerks. Yeah,
all of the,
I've
I
seen
haven't
you
seen
all.
I haven't seen any of the I started watching Clerks 2, but you'll never guess what.
You fell asleep.
I fell asleep, yeah.
Mm,
Absolutely.
yeah. I really like Clerks 2. I'd suggest that Clerks 2 is probably a little bit funnier than the first film, but
Right.
it doesn't have quite that. It doesn't also hit as well either because that first film's an absolute. It's a treat.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
I do tend to think though that those films hit hit you harder when you're in your sort of 20s, maybe early 30s, when that's your kind of humor. And as you get older, it just sort of, you know. But between the two of them, I would have picked Clerks. I think that would have been certainly on the short list for me.
Okay.
But to choose one, I went for Super Troopers,
Oh,
2001.
okay.
Which is, have you seen Super Troopers?
Super Troopers.
It's
I
about
haven't.
highway policemen.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I have. Yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
else. Who else has picked that? Somebody else has picked that.
Oh right.
I think it was Sean Panda Nicholson picked it. Sure.
Oh right. I don't remember hearing that. Yeah. Well, it was going to be that or Anchorman. Um.
Yes, I was close to thinking of picking Anchorman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll choose Anchorman instead then if someone else has said Super Troopers. I'll choose Anchorman. Why not?
There's no monopoly. You're more than welcome to pick the same as somebody else. But yeah, Anchorman is a supremely quotable film.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of those films where after a couple of viewings though, maybe it doesn't hit as well, like in terms of comedies, like Deadpool's funny once,
Mm,
but it's not funny twice, or at least
yeah.
I don't think so. But yeah, no, I'll stick with Super Troopers because I also find that supremely quotable as well, and
Mm,
they it's funny, it's funny from the off, and it just keeps that speed all the way through. So yeah, I really like that one. So yeah, Super Troopers.
okay, excellent. Okay, so moving up to episode 21, best movie about addiction. So we got a bit more Aronofsky in the conversation here.
Yeah.
Requiem for a Dream from 2000, which was Vanessa's choice, and Trainspotting from 1996, which was my choice.
Well, both amazing.
Mm.
I think in terms of addiction movies, you both picked the top two. I don't think there's anything to I don't worry, I have picked one. Um um between those two, I would probably go for Requiem for a Dream. Um Mostly because as I watched it, I thought to myself, this is the film I would probably show my kids to make them never take drugs. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
I can see that. Yeah.
to a degree, Train Spotting is fun. It's a little bit fun.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, there are there are bits in that film like at some point Spud says when he goes for his interview and he's like, no, pleasure, my pleasure at other people's leisure. And I still say that now. I don't say it for any particular reason, but it's still, it sticks with me. I think it's a really, really great movie. And when it came out, I watched it, on a loop.
Yeah.
And Requiem for a Dream, I would not watch on a loop.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've only watched it twice, and one of those times was for the podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't really have any desire to watch it again.
I think I could go back in, but it certainly is like awful, and it shows the worst of addiction, really.
mm,
That certainly the very end where everyone's as low as they can possibly be.
mm.
It just goes, oh, yeah, maybe this isn't for me.
Although I must admit, I think it was only I don't feel that I had the desire to rewatch Trainspotting after my children were born.
I
I
maybe,
think this is
yeah.
probably the first time for the podcast that I'd rewatched Trainspotting since they were born, because I think it is just, that whole arc with the baby is just horrible.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
you do sort of find that your tolerance for certain things in film is weakened when you become a father or a parent,
Yeah,
for sure.
that is very true. And you tend to cry more often as well, which is fun.
Yeah, I think that's more an age thing, though.
You think so? As you get older, you're like, oh my god, the Kung Fu Panda nearly
Although
died.
no, maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is that sort of thing. 'Cause I mean, I was never a cry. I used to take a lot to make me cry. But as soon as my daughter was born, my firstborn, I cried like a baby.
Mm,
So maybe that's it. Maybe that opens the well.
maybe it opens the emotional door.
Maybe.
Um, yeah, bloody
Mm.
kids. Uh, anyway,
Um,
anyway,
so,
to pick one, just and this is just it's a horror film and it's not really about addiction, but I've chosen Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer since he does seem to be addicted to murdering that.
oh, what a film.
You know, but it does have a sort of addiction to murder in it, because even at the very end, when you see some light in the tunnel, he finds someone who likes him and
Hmm.
he can protect. He still murders her.
Mm.
It it and it almost feels like in that film that they're going that they him and his friend, I can't remember what they're called, like they're trying to get the next hit of killing.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have that. So it's not
Otis. Is it Otis?
maybe
Her
it's not a
brother, isn't it?
slasher. It's not a slasher, and it's not
Oh no.
to a degree. Not really a serial killer movie. It's these two people who just can't get enough of killing people. So
Mm.
it does have a degree of addiction to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
It's
nothing
def
close to what you two picked.
it's definitely an interesting choice. I mean, that's, you're talking about Requiem for a Dream and not desiring to watch that. I mean, I've only ever seen Henry once, and I have no desire to rewatch it whatsoever. I remember it was at a point where I was going through a bit of a binge of sort of extreme cinema. I
Oh
remember
yeah, yeah.
watching this, and either the same day or the day after watching Man Bites Dog. Um, have you ever seen that?
No, I think Matthew's not recommended it, but
It's
said
that's
that
a
it's pretty broken.
it's similar, but a little bit more of a supremely dark comedy almost. It's a French film, and it's about a guy well, a serial killer who invites a film crew to follow him around, basically.
Oh, that sounds like my jam.
Mm. But that's pretty grim as well. It just sort of escalates and escalates and escalates, and is horrid in the end. But worth watching.
Okay, I'll add it. I'll add it to the ever-growing list.
And it's been a long time since I've watched it, so I don't know if I would recommend it for your effed up February, but probably because it is pretty effed up.
Well,
Um,
we've filled up at the moment for Effed Up February. I think
oh,
we've got the whole schedule sorted out, which is good for us.
excellent, excellent. Maybe next year then.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, okay, and then finally, we're finishing again on a horror note with episode 23, the best female directed horror films. Tarquin picked Near Dark from 1987, and I picked The Babadook from 2014.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually don't like either of those films. Um, the I think I've said this before on our podcast, but I think to me the Babadook was a little bit of a victim of expectation. You know,
Mm,
uh, before I'd seen it, everyone was saying how it was the scariest film in the entire world, and
mm,
there was nothing compared to it. So by the time I got round to it, I was expecting to be on the edge of my seat, and in fact, all I wanted to do was smack that kid. Um, and for me, I often find it very difficult to find the subtlety in films, whereas this is so heavy-handed with its message about what it's about. It's like,
mm,
and and don't get me wrong, it is good about what it's about, and I do feel for the characters, and I do feel for the kid towards the end,
mm.
and the mother. But as horror films go, it's really lacking in any horror for me.
Okay.
And Near Dark, I think I saw that recently-ish, and it just didn't do anything for it's vampires, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. There's the one guy who gets bit by a vampire, but he doesn't want to do it, and I'm like, ugh, get a grip.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I wasn't as high on it as like it's a very cult film, I think, and within
It is,
the
yeah.
genre circles, I think it's got a lot of love. And I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't gush over it at all.
No, well, my choice is Saint Maud, directed by Rose Glass.
Very,
Uh,
very good choice. It
yeah,
was a very close consider. I shifted between the Babadook, Saint Maud, and Raw, which was
yeah.
the director of Titan, actually, whose first film was Raw.
Well, I very nearly chose Titan for this. But Saint Maud is the first film I can recall that left me feeling I can't even explain it. I had to talk to someone about it
Mm,
because it made me feel really low. You know,
mm,
it had an emotional thing to it, and also the ending, the very ending of it is so not scary, but just awful. You know, when you finally get that glimpse into reality, and
hmm.
it's just disgusting, and it it just all the feelings that this film's made you feel. You know, uh, all there in this girl that this awful thing happened to, and she's just lost her mind, and
Yeah.
it's just a truly awful end to a film. And I would say Saint Maud is the reason that Matthew ended up becoming a co-host, really,
Okay.
um, because he had been on as a guest, but I was like, I need to talk about Saint Maud on the podcast, and you know, I wanted someone else to come on, and he came on, and you know, I think that just sort of really sort of led to him coming on again, and you know, from there on, it was like, should we just do this together? And since then, I've enjoyed having him as part of it because he does help me sometimes unpack the stuff, and you know,
Yeah.
he's got a better knowledge of film than I have. You
Well,
know.
I think you've got that you've got that great sort of almost sort of yin and yang with you and Matthew is that you look for different things in the films, which is great when you're looking at a podcast for discussion. You don't just want two people saying the same thing and people unpacking, you know, different things from the film and getting different things from the film, and I just think that's great. So I mean, Saint Maud not just being a great female directed horror film, but obviously an important one for Creative Psychopaths because that sounds
Yeah,
like it started that
yeah.
journey.
It's an important British horror film as well, I'd
Mm,
say. You know,
absolutely.
if any of you people on here are horror fans and you haven't seen Saint Maud, you should really add it to your list. Although you can expect to feel a bit miserable towards the end.
Mm. Well, I think
Um,
it came out around the same time as like Joker as well, I think, and it had that similar sort of vein of people who probably need a lot more help than they got from society
mhm.
and everything else.
Yeah,
It's that sort of feeling of just hopelessness and like you say, the ending is just
yeah. I mean, Joker actually did the
it's
same
the most
thing.
shocking 2 seconds
Yeah,
of
if
any
that, yeah,
film I've
yeah,
seen in a long time.
yeah, yeah. It's awful stuff. But yeah, you said the Joker there, and that's or Joker. Sorry, that's something that it almost did the same thing to me when I watched Joker. It made me feel like I was starting to crack.
Mm.
So it's a film that I won't regularly go back to. I have watched it one more time, but there's something about it that just makes me feel really unstable.
I don't know if this maybe says something about me, but I got exactly the same sort of feeling. But I've watched Joker no end of times. And maybe that speaks to my
I would watch it more often. I really like it, but every time I've seen it, it makes me feel a bit mentally weird, which I am anyway.
I would not agree with you on that. I don't think you're mentally weird at all.
I am. I've managed to keep the ramblings in check on this. I thought I was pretty good. I haven't gone off on any tangents.
No. Well,
good for me.
That brings us to the end of the list, Mark. So, listen, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for bringing me into the Movie Duel fold. I'll put down my weapon of choice now.
What was your weapon of choice? Maybe that's something I need to do at the start of these. Is what weapon have we got?
I don't know. You know that Klingon one that's got a sort of axe on one end and a sort of a scythe on the other, or something like that. That one. I'll have that.
Oh, right, okay. Very aggressive. Well, I thought you might just like say a pen or something like that you've got in front of you.
Maybe I should have a bread knife.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, you know, they have that. That's what I thought about with the movie Duels. So that's why I was going for the old
that's just reminded me of the Cable Guy.
Yeah, you see, Jim Carrey again.
Yeah.
That is an underrated movie.
God, I haven't seen that for years. I remember having it on, taped it off Sky Movies and watched it, but I haven't seen that for years. But yeah, it is underrated for sure.
Oh, nearly tangented.
Nearly tangented. Okay, so do you want to just sort of tell the listeners about where they can find Creative Psychopaths and what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, you can find Creative Psychopaths on all the podcast apps of your choice, including YouTube now. Which, thanks to Pete here, I was able to figure out. Well, he figured it out and told me what to do. I didn't figure it out. We have a Facebook group and an Instagram. I mostly manage the Instagram, and the Facebook group is more there so people can interact with the film that we're going to be watching that week and tell us what they think. And then we read out on the podcast what they think. And 90% of the time, they say in a few sentences what we could have said. But, you know, it doesn't work out as a podcast, really, does it? If we're just going, oh, yeah, it was good, actually. Oh, no.
We'd get a lot more episodes out if we just did that, wouldn't we, really, suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good, yeah.
But we have got Effed Up February at the moment. We currently have an episode to Tan, and we have got in the works, we're going to be doing Threads, Soft and Quiet, and Last House on the Left.
Oh, Soft and Quiet.
Not necessarily in that order. And then in March, I think Peter's going to be joining us for all month, are you?
I'm hoping to, yes.
Yeah, we're going to be doing our own versus episode. So horror movies where it's someone versus someone else. I think, are we going to do Alien versus Predator? Yeah, maybe. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, I'd throw that in for my choice, yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go, you see. So we're theming months, I think. We're doing something over there. But come and join us, listening to us ramble, and that'll be fun. Yeah.
Okay, so once again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. And just leaves me to say goodbye, and for Mark to say,
people think pipes grow in their homes. Well, they sure as hell don't. Look at my knees! Look at my knees!